Nina Vale stood in the marble lobby of Roman Voss's glass tower, hands trembling around a folder containing her brother's death sentence. A gambling debt so massive it might as well have been written in blood. She'd rehearsed her plea 100 times, prepared herself for cruelty, maybe violence. What she wasn't prepared for was the man himself. 6 feet of controlled danger in a tailored suit, eyes like winter steel. Studying her not with anger, but with something far more unsettling, interest. "You came alone?" he said, voice smooth as expensive whiskey. "That makes you either very brave or very stupid. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button. Let's see how far this story travels. Stay until the end, because what happens between Nina and Roman will change everything you think you know about power, loyalty, and the kind of love that can remake even the most dangerous man alive. The elevator climbed 63 floors in silence, so thick Nina could hear her own heartbeat hammering against her ribs. She watched the numbers tick upward, 45, 46, 47. Each floor putting more distance between her and the street-level reality where normal people lived normal lives, where ballet instructors didn't walk into the offices of men whose names made grown men flinch. Roman Voss. Even thinking his name felt dangerous. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it had been designed by someone who worshipped at the altar of intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city sprawling below like a kingdom awaiting orders. The furniture was all sharp angles and dark leather. A receptionist with perfect posture and a face that revealed nothing looked up from her desk. "Nina Vale," Nina said, hating how her voice wavered. "I have an appointment. Mr. Voss is expecting you." The woman's tone suggested she'd seen plenty of people walk through those doors. Nina wondered how many of them had walked back out. Through the double doors, end of the hall. Nina's heels clicked against marble that probably cost more than her yearly salary. She'd worn her best dress, black, conservative, nothing that could be mistaken for an attempt at manipulation. Her dark hair was pulled back in the same severe bun she wore to teach class. No jewelry except the simple watch her mother had given her before cancer had taken her 3 years ago. "Mom, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The double doors were solid oak, heavy enough that pushing them open required real effort. The office beyond made the reception area look modest. Roman Voss stood at the windows with his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what Martinez thinks he can negotiate. The terms don't change because someone found a conscience." He paused, listening. "Then remind him what happened to the last person who tried to renegotiate with me." Nina's stomach dropped. She'd known, intellectually, what Roman Voss was. Everyone in the city knew. His name came up in whispered conversations, in news reports carefully worded by lawyers, in the kind of stories people told to prove they had connections to real power. He owned half the city's real estate. His business interests stretched into shipping, construction, private security, all legitimate on paper, all allegedly backed by the kind of violence that kept everything running smooth. But knowing something and standing in the same room with it were different animals entirely. "I'll call you back," Roman said, and ended the call. He turned, and Nina forgot how to breathe. The photos she'd seen, rare, always from a distance, hadn't prepared her. Roman Voss was 42, according to the information Josh had babbled through tears. But he moved like a man in his prime, every gesture controlled and deliberate. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples. A face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully blank, all sharp cheekbones and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. Eyes the color of winter storms. Those eyes settled on her with an intensity that made Nina want to step back. She forced herself to hold still. "Miss Vale?" His voice matched the rest of him, smooth, controlled, with something underneath that suggested he could switch from calm to lethal without changing expression. "You're punctual. That's something. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Voss. Did I give you a choice?" He moved to the desk, a massive thing that looked like it had been hewn from a single piece of dark wood, and sat, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Nina sat, clutching her folder like a shield. Up close she could see details the photos had missed. A thin scar along his left cheekbone. Cufflinks that were probably worth more than her car. Hands that looked equally capable of signing million-dollar deals or breaking bones. Your brother, Roman said, is an idiot. Heat flooded Nina's face. I know. Do you? Because Josh Vale walked into one of my establishments 3 months ago and proceeded to gamble away money he didn't have with the kind of confidence that suggested he thought the universe owed him good luck. Roman opened a drawer, pulled out a file that was considerably thicker than Nina's folder. He lost $60,000 in his first week. Did he stop? Cut his losses? No. He decided the solution to being in debt was to go deeper, because surely his luck would turn. Nina's hands tightened on her folder. She'd heard this story already, sobbed out by Josh in her tiny apartment 2 nights ago. Her baby brother, 21 years old and so goddamn sure he was smarter than everyone else, had thought he could beat the house, had convinced himself that one big win would solve all his problems. By the time my people cut him off, Roman continued, he was in for $243,000. He slid a paper across the desk, plus interest. Nina looked at the number and felt the world tilt. $296,000. It might as well have been $10 million. He doesn't have it, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Obviously. And neither do I. Also obvious. Roman leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unsettling eyes. So why are you here, Miss Vale? Did you think I'd be moved by tears, by a pretty face? Nina forced herself to meet his gaze. I came to negotiate. Something flickered in Roman's expression, surprise maybe, or amusement. Negotiate. Josh is young, he's stupid. He made a mistake. Nina opened her folder with shaking hands, pulling out the papers she'd spent all night preparing. I'm a ballet instructor. I own a small studio. It's not much, but it's mine, free and clear. According to the county assessor, it's worth about $70,000. She slid the deed across the desk. I also have a degree in arts administration. I speak 3 languages. I have no debt, a clean record, and references from, What are you doing? Roman's voice cut through her pitch. Nina blinked. I'm offering collateral, assets. You thought you'd trade your life's work for your idiot brother's gambling debt? Roman picked up the deed, glanced at it, set it back down. The studio you built from nothing, according to the background check my people ran. You were 19 when you opened it, used your mother's life insurance money. Of course he'd run a background check. Nina felt exposed, like he'd peeled back her skin to examine what was underneath. I'm offering everything I have, she said. The studio, my time, my work. I'll do whatever you need, administrative work, event planning, translations. I'll work off the debt. At what rate? Roman asked. Let's say I'm feeling generous and value your labor at $100,000 a year. That's 3 years to pay off the principal, not counting interest. Can your studio survive without you for 3 years? No, it couldn't. Nina had 5 instructors who depended on her, 60 students whose families had already paid for the semester. The studio was her mother's legacy, the only thing she had left of the woman who'd scraped together every penny to pay for Nina's training. I'll find a way, Nina said. You'll lose everything. Roman stood, walked back to the windows. Your studio will close within 6 months. Your instructors will find other jobs. Your students will scatter. And at the end of 3 years, you'll have nothing to show for your sacrifice except a brother who learned that someone will always clean up his messes. Each word landed like a punch. Nina blinked hard against the tears threatening to fall. Then what do you suggest? She asked, hating how broken she sounded. Just let you kill him? Roman turned, and for the first time, something almost like emotion crossed his face. I don't kill people over gambling debts, Miss Vale. That's bad business. Dead men can't pay, and making an example of every idiot who overextends himself would require more bodies than I have patience for. He moved back to the desk, braced his hands on it, leaned forward. But I do require consequences. Your brother borrowed money from me. He owes me money. This is not a complicated equation. He's 21 years old enough to know better, old enough to understand that actions have consequences. Roman's eyes were cold now, all business. Old enough that I don't particularly care whether he lives or dies, Miss Vale. What I care about is maintaining order. If I let one debt slide, every gambler in this city will think they can play me for a fool. Nina's hands curled into fists. So what happens now? That depends. Roman straightened, picked up her deed again, examined it more carefully. You came here prepared to negotiate, to offer me something of value in exchange for your brother's debt. That shows more spine than most people who walk through that door. I'm not afraid of you. It was a lie. They both knew it was a lie. Roman smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Nina had ever seen on a human face. Not cruel, not mocking, just completely devoid of warmth. You should be, he said softly. But let's pretend you're not. Let's pretend you're exactly as brave as you're trying to appear. He set the deed down, came around the desk, perched on the edge directly in front of her, close enough that Nina could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. I'm going to make you an offer, Miss Vale. You can accept it, or you can walk out that door and let Josh face the consequences of his actions on his own. Nina's throat was so dry she could barely swallow. What kind of offer? The kind that keeps your brother alive and your studio open. Roman tilted his head, studying her. I have a problem, Miss Vale. Several problems, actually, but one in particular that you might be uniquely positioned to help me solve. What problem could I possibly help you with? Perception. Roman gestured to the windows, the city beyond. I have money. I have power. What I don't have is respectability. The kind of social capital that opens certain doors, grants certain access. I'm building legitimate business interests, and those interests require me to move in circles that find my reputation distasteful. Nina stared at him. You want me to make you respectable? I want you to stand next to me and make people think I might be worth their time. Roman's expression didn't change. I attend charity galas, business dinners, cultural events. I need someone presentable, educated, and capable of holding a conversation with people who pretend they're better than I am. Someone who won't embarrass me or bore me to death. You want to hire me as, what, an escort? I want to hire you as exactly what you are, a professional woman with social skills and cultural credibility. You'll accompany me to events. You'll be charming, intelligent, and exactly as real as you're being right now. He paused. You'll also live in the penthouse apartment 3 floors down from this office, where my security team can keep you safe and where I can access you when needed. The room spun. Live with you? Near me, not with me. I value my privacy, Miss Vale. Roman's eyes narrowed. 6 months. You give me 6 months of your time, your presence, and your absolute loyalty. In exchange, I'll clear Josh's debt completely, continue paying your studio's operating expenses so it doesn't fold in your absence, and provide you with a stipend of $10,000 a month for your personal use. Nina's brain stuttered over the numbers. 6 months. $60,000 in stipend alone, plus her studio saved, plus Josh's debt erased. It was more money than she'd see in years. It was also completely insane. Why me? She asked. You could hire anyone, an actual professional. Professional companions are predictable. They say what they think I want to hear. They're performing a role, and it shows. Roman leaned closer, and Nina caught herself pressing back into the chair. You walked in here ready to sacrifice everything for an idiot brother who doesn't deserve it. That's not performance. That's real. And real is exactly what I need. What happens at the end of 6 months? That depends on how useful you prove to be. Roman straightened, moved back to his side of the desk. If you're an asset, we renegotiate. If you're not, you walk away free and clear, debt paid, studio safe, money in your pocket. And if I say no right now, Roman's expression went flat. Then Josh has until midnight tomorrow to come up with $296,000. When he fails, and he will fail, my people will break both his legs as a lesson in financial responsibility. After that, we'll sell the debt to a collections agency that won't be as patient as I've been, and Josh can spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. Nina felt sick. That's not a choice. Of course it is. Roman picked up his phone, began scrolling through messages. You can choose to help your brother, or you can choose not to. What you can't do is pretend the debt doesn't exist. He glanced up. I'm giving you more consideration than Josh deserves, Miss Vale. I suggest you take it. This is blackmail. This is business. Roman set the phone down. You have until 5 o'clock today to decide. My assistant will provide you with the contract to review. If you choose to accept, you'll move into the apartment tomorrow morning. Your first event is tomorrow night, a fundraiser for the Arts Council. Black tie. His eyes traveled over her conservative dress. My people will handle your wardrobe. Nina stood on shaking legs. I need to think. Of course you do. Roman pressed a button on his desk phone. Rebecca, please provide Miss Vale with the contract and show her to the waiting area. The receptionist appeared so quickly she must have been standing outside the door. Nina let herself be guided out, her mind reeling. In the waiting area, Rebecca handed her a thick folder. "The contract, Miss Vale. Mr. Voss's direct line is on the cover sheet. Please call by 5 o'clock with your decision." Nina took the folder, walked to the elevator, rode down 63 floors in the same crushing silence. Outside, the city looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but Nina felt like she'd stepped into an alternate universe. Her phone buzzed. Josh. "Well?" His voice was tight with fear. "What did he say?" Nina looked at the folder in her hands, at the deed to her studio, still inside, at the contract she hadn't read yet. "He made an offer," she said. "What kind of offer? Nina, please, you have to— I have until 5 to decide." Nina closed her eyes against the afternoon sun. "Josh, what you did, do you have any idea?" I know. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." His voice broke. "I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I thought I could fix it. I thought—" "You thought wrong." Nina's hand tightened on the phone. "And now I have to fix it for you." "What does that mean?" "What did he offer?" Nina looked up at this glass tower, at the 63rd floor where Roman Voss was probably already back to running his empire, already thinking about his next move. "I'll tell you when I decide," she said, and hung up. The contract was 47 pages long and written in the kind of legal language designed to make normal humans give up and hire a lawyer. Nina read it 3 times anyway, sitting in a coffee shop 2 blocks from her studio, ignoring the concerned looks from her assistant manager. The terms were exactly what Roman had outlined. 6 months, starting tomorrow. She'd attend events with him an average of 3 times per week, with advance notice provided for each. She'd live in the apartment he provided, with her own space and privacy guaranteed. She'd receive the $10,000 monthly stipend plus a clothing allowance, meal per diem, and access to a car service. Josh's debt would be cleared immediately upon signing. Her studio's operating expenses would be covered for the full 6 months, with the money paid directly to her business account. There were confidentiality clauses, non-disclosure agreements, provisions about social media and public statements, a section on security protocols that made Nina's head spin. And there, on page 34, the clause that made her hands go cold. The client acknowledges that the employer's business interests sometimes involve situations of elevated personal risk. The client agrees to follow all security directives without question or delay. Failure to comply with security directives may result in immediate termination of this agreement, with no financial penalty to the employer. Elevated personal risk. Security directives. Roman had been very careful not to call this what it was. Nina would be living in the world of a man whose enemies didn't send angry emails or file lawsuits. They sent messages written in blood and violence. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Your decision, Miss Vale?" RV. Nina stared at the message, at the contract, at her studio visible through the coffee shop window, where her evening classes would be starting in an hour, where Sarah, her best instructor, was probably already warming up students, where parents would be arriving to pick up their kids, their biggest worry whether Emma's pirouette had improved or whether Tyler was ready to move up a level. Normal life. Safe life. The life she'd built from her mother's life insurance money and her own sweat and stubborn refusal to let ballet die just because she'd aged out of performing herself. She typed, "I need to see the apartment first." The response came immediately. "Address below. Security is expecting you. You have 1 hour." The apartment was on the 60th floor of Roman's tower, and calling it an apartment was like calling the ocean a puddle. The security guard who escorted her up, a man named Marcus with kind eyes and the build of someone who could break her in half, gave her a brief tour. 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view that made Nina dizzy. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and neutral colors. "Mr. Voss had it redecorated last week," Marcus said. "Thought you might prefer something less— him." Nina touched the back of a sofa that probably cost more than her car. "What was it before?" "Black leather and chrome. Very bachelor mob boss." Marcus's mouth twitched. His words, not mine. Despite everything, Nina almost smiled. "He has a sense of humor?" When it suits him, Marcus gestured to the master bedroom. This is yours. The closet's been stocked with basics in your size. Again, Mr. Voss's people are efficient. The building has a gym, pool, and private dining room for residents. Your access card will get you anywhere except Mr. Voss's floor and the sublevels. What's in the sublevels? Marcus's expression went carefully blank. Nothing you need to worry about, Miss Vale. Right, nothing except whatever Roman Voss didn't want random people seeing. Security protocols, Nina said. The contract mentioned them. If Mr. Voss tells you to do something, go somewhere, stay somewhere, get in a car, you do it. No questions, no delays. Marcus met her eyes. He doesn't give orders without reason, Miss Vale. If he says move, you move. Because people might try to hurt me? Because people might try to hurt him through you. Marcus pulled a card from his pocket, handed it to her. My number. You need anything at all. You call me, day or night. Nina took the card, looked around the apartment that could be hers. Safe, beautiful, expensive. Everything she'd never had. Everything she'd have to sell 6 months of her life to keep. Her phone buzzed. 4:30. She had 30 minutes to decide. Nina walked to the windows, looked out at the city turning gold in the late afternoon sun. Somewhere down there, Josh was probably pacing his apartment, terrified. Her instructors were teaching classes, unaware that their boss was standing 60 floors up, trying to decide whether to save them by enslaving herself. That was dramatic. It wasn't slavery. It was a job. A weird, probably dangerous job working for a man who scared the hell out of her, but a job nonetheless. 6 months. She could survive 6 months of anything. Nina pulled out her phone, dialed the number on the contract. Roman answered on the first ring. Your decision, Miss Vale? I want one change to the contract, Nina said. Silence. Then, I'm listening. Josh doesn't know the terms. He doesn't know what I'm doing or why. As far as he's concerned, you agreed to a payment plan and I co-signed. Nina's reflection stared back at her from the window, looking braver than she felt. He doesn't get to know I'm doing this for him. Why? Because if he knows, he won't learn anything. He'll just think someone else fixed his problem. Nina's jaw tightened. I want him to believe he's paying this debt himself. I want him to feel it. More silence. Then, so quiet she almost missed it. Interesting. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Roman's voice shifted, became brisk and businesslike. I'll have Rebecca send the amended contract within the hour. Sign it, scan it, send it back. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., Marcus will collect you from your apartment and bring you here. Pack light. Everything you need will be provided. Tomorrow night is the fundraiser? Tomorrow night is your first test. Roman paused. Don't disappoint me, Miss Vale. He hung up. Nina stood in the empty apartment holding her phone and tried to convince herself she hadn't just made a deal with the devil. Her phone buzzed again. Josh. Nina, please. I'm losing my mind. She typed back. It's handled. Voss agreed to a payment plan. You're going to work it off. What? How? What did you do? I co-signed. You miss a payment. We both pay. So don't miss a payment. Oh my God. Nina, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Nina deleted the text thread without responding, blocked his number, and called her assistant manager. Sarah, I need you to take over for a while. 6 months, maybe less. Nina forced brightness into her voice. I got offered a consulting contract, arts administration for a private client. The money's too good to pass up. Sarah, bless her, asked all the normal questions. Who was the client? What would Nina be doing? Would she still own the studio? Nina lied smoothly, amazed at how easy it was. A private collector, very wealthy, very demanding. Event planning, cultural consulting, translation work. Of course, she'd still own the studio. This was just temporary. By the time she hung up, the amended contract was in her email. Nina signed it on her phone, scanned it with a shaking hand, sent it back. 60 seconds later, her phone rang. Rebecca. Miss Vale? Mr. Voss asked me to confirm receipt of your signed contract. The full terms are now in effect. Josh Vale's debt has been cleared from our books, and the first payment to your studio's operating account will post tonight. Her voice was professionally neutral. Welcome aboard. The line went dead. Nina sat on the expensive sofa in the empty apartment and tried to remember how to breathe. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the city in shades of orange and gold. Beautiful, dangerous, just like the man who now owned 6 months of her life. Moving day started at 6:45 a.m. with Marcus knocking on her apartment door, looking apologetic. "Mr. Voss wants you upstairs by 7, he said, eyeing the 2 suitcases at her feet. "That everything?" "I'm coming back for the rest later," Nina lied. Truth was, she didn't own much worth moving. Clothes, books, a few photos. Her real life was in her studio, in the routines and rituals she'd built there. The ride up to the 60th floor felt different this time. Real. Yesterday had been theoretical. Today, the elevator doors opened onto her new reality. The apartment looked exactly the same, but now there were fresh flowers on the kitchen counter and a note in sharp, precise handwriting. Stylist arrives at 9 a.m. Event begins at 7 p.m. Be ready by 6:30. RV. No good morning? No welcome. Just orders. Nina unpacked mechanically, hanging clothes in a closet the size of her old bedroom, setting her mother's photo on the nightstand. By 9 a.m., she was showered and dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, trying not to pace. The stylist arrived with an assistant and 6 rolling racks of clothes. Nina Vale? The stylist was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the kind of assessing gaze that saw everything. "I'm Margaret. Mr. Voss hired me to make sure you don't embarrass him tonight." "That's direct." "Mr. Voss pays me to be direct." Margaret circled her slowly. "Good bone structure. You know how to stand. That's the ballet training. Height? 5'6". Shoe size? 7.5". Margaret snapped her fingers at her assistant, who began pulling garment bags. "The event tonight is the Arts Council Gala. Black tie, old money, people who think they're cultured because they write checks. Mr. Voss wants you to look like you belong there naturally, not like you're trying too hard." Over the next 3 hours, Nina was measured, draped, pinned, and assessed like a doll being prepared for display. Margaret rejected 6 dresses before settling on a 7th, a floor-length gown in deep emerald that somehow made Nina's dark hair and pale skin look striking instead of washed out. "Better," Margaret said. "Jewelry?" The assistant produced a flat case. Inside, a diamond necklace that made Nina's breath catch. "These are real," she said stupidly. "Of course they're real. Mr. Voss doesn't do costume jewelry." Margaret fastened the necklace around Nina's throat. The stones were cold against her skin. "You'll wear your hair up. Simple. Classic. I'll send someone at 5 to do your hair and makeup." "I can do my own." "No, you can't. Not for this." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "Look, honey, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what Mr. Voss's world looks like, and I know what happens to people who walk into it unprepared. You seem nice. You seem normal. So trust me when I say you want every advantage you can get tonight." Nina met her eyes in the mirror. "What kind of advantages? The kind that make people underestimate you?" Margaret adjusted the dress's shoulder. "They're going to look at you and see arm candy. Pretty girl on a dangerous man's arm. Let them. While they're busy dismissing you, you watch and you learn. Figure out who has real power and who's just pretending. Mr. Voss will be paying attention to that." "This is a test," Nina said quietly. "Everything with Mr. Voss is a test." Margaret packed up her equipment. "The clothes in the closet are yours. Work wardrobe, casual clothes, gym stuff. The safe in the bedroom has more jewelry for different occasions. The code is your birthday." Of course, Roman knew her birthday. He probably knew everything about her. By the time Margaret left, it was almost noon. Nina made herself eat something from the fully stocked refrigerator, then spent the afternoon reading articles about the Arts Council, memorizing names and faces of board members who would probably be at the gala. At 5 o'clock, a makeup artist arrived. By 6, Nina barely recognized herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was polished, sophisticated, expensive. The kind of woman who belonged at charity galas. The kind of woman who could stand next to Roman Voss and look like she belonged there. At 6:25, her phone buzzed. "Marcus is waiting downstairs. Don't keep me waiting." RV? Nina took one last look at herself, at the emerald dress and the diamond necklace and the woman she was pretending to be, and headed for the elevator. The car waiting outside was a black Mercedes, sleek and anonymous. Marcus held the door for her. "You look nice, Miss Vale," he said. "I look terrified." That too. He smiled slightly. Mr. Voss is already at the venue. I'll drop you at the side entrance. He'll meet you there. The drive took 15 minutes through evening traffic. Nina spent it trying to remember how to breathe, how to walk in heels this high, how to be the person Roman needed her to be. The venue was a historic hotel downtown, the kind of place where presidents stayed and old money gathered. Marcus pulled up to a discreet side entrance where a man in a black suit was waiting. "Miss Vale," the man said. "This way." Nina followed him through a service corridor, up a back staircase, through a door that opened into a private alcove off the main ballroom. And there, adjusting his cufflinks with the casual precision of someone who'd done it 10,000 times, was Roman Voss. He wore a tuxedo like he'd been born in it. Every line perfect, every detail exactly right. When he turned and saw her, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or approval. "Miss Vale." His eyes traveled over her, assessing. "You clean up well." "Margaret has good taste." "I pay her to." Roman closed the distance between them, reached out, adjusted her necklace slightly. His fingers brushed her collarbone and Nina froze. "Nervous?" "Terrified." "Good. Means you're smart." He offered his arm. "Rules are simple. Stay close. Smile. Let me do most of the talking, but if someone addresses you directly, be charming and vague. Don't drink more than 1 glass of champagne. Don't wander off. Don't trust anyone." Nina stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely." Roman's expression was granite. "Half the people in that room would love to see me fail. The other half are too scared to show it. You're a new variable, which makes you interesting. People will try to figure out who you are and what you mean. Let them wonder." "What do I mean?" Nina asked. "To you, I mean. What am I supposed to be?" Roman smiled that terrifying smile. "Whatever they imagine is more useful than the truth. Now come on, let's give them something to talk about." He led her through the door, into the ballroom, into a world that glittered with wealth and danger, and the kind of power that came from knowing exactly how much force to apply to break someone without leaving marks. And Nina, wearing diamonds that cost more than her education and a dress that felt like armor, stepped into Roman Voss's world and prayed she'd survive it. The ballroom hit Nina like a physical force, crystal chandeliers throwing fractured light across marble floors, a string quartet playing something classical and forgettable, the low murmur of 200 conversations happening at once. Every person in the room looked like they'd been born wearing formal wear. The women dripped diamonds. The men wore watches that cost more than houses. Roman's hand settled on the small of her back, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. "Possessive. Breathe," he said quietly. "You belong here as much as any of them." "I really don't." "Then fake it better." His hand pressed slightly, guiding her forward. "Victor Hastings, 11 o'clock. Owns half the city's waterfront development. Wants me to invest in his latest project." Nina spotted the man, 60-something, silver hair, smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was already watching them approach. "Roman." Hastings extended a hand, his gaze sliding to Nina with undisguised curiosity. "Didn't expect to see you here. Thought charity galas were beneath your pay grade." "I'm expanding my interests." Roman's handshake was brief, controlled. "Victor Hastings, this is Nina Vale." "Miss Vale." Hastings took her hand, held it a fraction too long. "How does someone like you end up with someone like Roman?" The question was designed to offend both of them. Nina felt Roman go still beside her. She smiled, all teeth. "Mr. Voss appreciates ballet. We met through mutual interest in the arts." It wasn't entirely a lie. Roman had certainly been interested in what she could offer. Hastings' Orlis eyebrows rose. "Ballet! How refined!" His tone suggested the opposite. And here I thought Roman's interests ran more toward breaking kneecaps than appreciating pirouettes. "I'm a man of varied tastes," Roman said, voice gone cold. "Some more profitable than others. Speaking of which, I reviewed your development proposal. My answer is no." Hastings' smile froze. "We haven't even discussed terms." "We don't need to. Your numbers don't work, your permits are questionable, and your track record suggests I'd be throwing money into a hole." Roman's hand tightened fractionally on Nina's back. "Enjoy the evening, Victor." He steered Nina away before Hastings could respond, navigating through the crowd with the confidence of someone who owned every room he walked into. "That was brutal," Nina said quietly. "That was business. Hastings has been trying to get my money for 6 months. Now he knows where we stand. Roman nodded to a passing couple, his expression shifting seamlessly into something pleasant and unremarkable. Smile. Catherine Weller just noticed us. Nina didn't know who Catherine Weller was, but she recognized power when she saw it. The woman cutting through the crowd was 70 if she was a day, wearing sapphires that probably had their own insurance policy. Her eyes were sharp and calculating. Roman Voss. Catherine's voice carried decades of cigarettes and expensive whiskey. I heard rumors you'd found yourself a companion. Didn't believe them until now. Catherine. Roman's tone warmed, genuinely this time. You're looking well. I'm looking old, and I know it. Catherine's gaze fixed on Nina. Who's this? Nina Vale. Nina. Catherine Weller runs the Arts Council and most of the cultural institutions in this city. All the ones worth running, Catherine corrected. She studied Nina with an intensity that made the earlier assessments look amateur. Vale. Any relation to Maria Vale? Nina's breath caught. She was my mother. It was. Catherine's expression softened fractionally. I saw her dance once. Long time ago, before you were born, probably. Giselle, I think. She was extraordinary. She looked at Roman. This one's mother was the real thing, Roman. Not just technically proficient, actually magical. Nina teaches now, Roman said. Runs her own studio. Does she? Catherine tilted her head. And you're spending your evening at a charity gala instead of in your studio because the question was a trap. Nina could feel it. Because Mr. Voss asked me to, she said simply, and because supporting the arts matters, whether I'm teaching them or attending events like this. Catherine's lips quirked. Diplomatic. I like her, Roman. Try not to ruin her. She swept away, leaving Nina's heart hammering. That went well, Roman said. She knew my mother. Catherine knows everyone worth knowing. The fact that she approved of you means this evening just got significantly easier. Roman snagged 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter, handed one to Nina. 1 glass, remember? I remember. Nina took a sip, more for something to do with her hands than because she wanted it. How many people here actually like you? Like? Maybe 3. Respect? Most of them. Fear? All of them. Roman's eyes scanned the room constantly, tracking movements and conversations. Liking me isn't the point. Understanding that crossing me is a bad idea, that's the point. Must be lonely. Roman's gaze snapped to her, something dangerous flickering in his expression. What? Being feared instead of liked. Nina met his eyes, never knowing if people are being genuine or just scared. You think I care about genuine? I think everyone cares about it. Some people just get better at pretending they don't. For a long moment, Roman just looked at her. Then someone called his name and the moment shattered. The next hour blurred into a parade of introductions. Business owners, politicians, socialites, all of them curious about the woman on Roman Voss's arm. Nina smiled until her face hurt, made small talk about ballet and the weather and how lovely the venue was. She fielded intrusive questions with vague pleasantries and watched Roman operate like a master chess player, 3 moves ahead of everyone else. By the time they sat for dinner, Nina's feet were screaming in her heels and she desperately wanted to go home. Their table was near the front, arranged with surgical precision. Nina found herself seated next to a man named David Chen, who ran some kind of tech company and seemed genuinely nice, which made him deeply suspicious in a room full of sharks. First time at one of these? David asked as the first course arrived. That obvious? You look like you'd rather be anywhere else. It's refreshing. Most people here are trying so hard to look like they belong that they forget to be human. He glanced at Roman, who was deep in conversation with a councilwoman 3 seats down. How long have you known Roman? Not long. Nina pushed her salad around her plate. We have mutual interests. In the arts, I heard. David's expression suggested he didn't believe it for a second. You're a ballet instructor, right? I run a studio, yes. My daughter takes ballet. 7 years old, thinks she's going to be a principal dancer at ABT. He smiled fondly. Where's your studio? Nina told him, and they spent the next 20 minutes having an actual normal conversation about teaching methods and whether young dancers should compete or focus on artistry. It was the first genuine interaction she'd had all evening, and Nina found herself almost relaxing. Until Roman's hand settled on her knee under the table. She froze mid-sentence. His hand didn't move, didn't squeeze, just rested there, a clear message of ownership. "Sorry to interrupt," Roman said smoothly, though he clearly wasn't. "Nina, Senator Morrison wants to discuss arts funding. I thought you might have insights." It was a dismissal. David took it gracefully, turning to engage the person on his other side. Roman leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. "Careful with Chen. He's not as harmless as he seems. He was asking about my studio. He was fishing for information about us, about what you mean to me." Roman's hand moved fractionally higher on her thigh. "Everything here is a probe, Nina, even kindness." Nina's skin felt too tight. "Your hand is sending a message to everyone watching that you're mine." His voice was perfectly calm, like they were discussing the weather. "Get used to it. I'm not yours. For the next 6 months, you are. That's what you signed up for." Roman withdrew his hand, sat back, became the picture of polite attention as the senator launched into a speech about budget allocations. Nina's thighs still burned where he'd touched her. The dinner dragged on for another 90 minutes. Speeches about the importance of arts education, a video montage of programs the council had funded, an auction for a weekend at someone's villa in Tuscany that went for $200,000 like it was pocket change. Roman bid on nothing, spoke when spoken to, and kept Nina close with a possessiveness that made her skin crawl and her pulse race in equal measure. By the time the evening wound down, Nina was exhausted in ways that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. In the car heading back to the tower, Roman scrolled through his phone while Nina tried to process everything that had happened. "You did well," he said without looking up. "Is that a compliment or an assessment?" "Both." Roman pocketed his phone, turned those cold eyes on her. "Catherine Weller liked you. David Chen was trying to figure out our weak points. Victor Hastings is going to spend the next week wondering if he can leverage you against me somehow. You handled all of it without falling apart." I smiled and made small talk, hardly an achievement. "You'd be surprised how many people can't manage even that under pressure." Roman studied her for a long moment. "You're angry." "I'm tired." "You're angry because I touched you, because I claimed you in front of a room full of people who will now assume we're sleeping together." Heat flooded Nina's face. "Are you?" "Am I what?" "Assuming we're going to sleep together." Nina forced herself to hold his gaze. "Because that wasn't in the contract." "No, it wasn't." Roman's expression was unreadable. "I don't pay for sex, Miss Vale. If I wanted that kind of arrangement, I'd have been far more explicit in my terms." "Then why?" "Because perception is everything. Those people tonight needed to see that you're important to me, that touching you means crossing me, that you're protected." His jaw tightened. "There are men in that room who would hurt you just to prove they could reach something I value. Making it clear that you're mine, whether it's true or not, keeps you safe." Nina's anger deflated, leaving something more complicated in its wake. "You could have warned me." Would it have changed anything? No, probably not. The car pulled up to the tower. Marcus was waiting, along with 2 other security guards Nina didn't recognize. Roman noticed her noticing. Increased security for the next few days, standard protocol after a public appearance. People are going to try something? People are always trying something. Roman stepped out of the car, offered his hand to help her out. The question is whether they succeed. Upstairs, Nina's feet had gone numb in her heels. She kicked them off the second the apartment door closed, nearly moaning with relief. Roman had followed her in, which surprised her. She'd assumed he'd disappear back to his own floor. "Drink?" he asked, heading for the bar she hadn't noticed before. "I thought I was limited to 1 glass of champagne. That was at the gala. Here, you can have whatever you want." He poured himself something amber and expensive looking. "You're off the clock." Nina sank onto the sofa, grateful to be off her feet. "Am I ever really off the clock?" "Fair point." Roman handed her a glass of wine, red, dry, exactly what she would have ordered. Of course he knew. "We have 3 more events this week. Tomorrow night is dinner with potential investors. Friday is an art gallery opening. Saturday is a private dinner party at Catherine Weller's house." Nina's head spun. "I thought you said 3 events per week on average." This is an unusual week. Catherine's invitation is actually significant. She doesn't invite people to her home unless she's decided they matter. Roman sat in the chair across from her, still wearing his tuxedo jacket, still looking perfectly put together, while Nina was pretty sure her updo was coming apart. You impressed her. That opens doors. Doors to what? Legitimacy. Catherine Weller's approval means access to old money, cultural institutions, the kind of social capital that can't be bought. He took a sip of his drink. It means people will start taking me seriously as someone with interests beyond what they whisper about. Do you care what they whisper? I care about what I can't build while they're whispering. Roman's expression went distant. There are business opportunities that require a certain reputation, respectability, the appearance of being someone who contributes to society instead of bleeding it. And you think standing next to me at parties will give you that? I think you're the first person I've brought to one of these events who didn't look like I rented her for the evening. His eyes focused on her again. You were real tonight, Nina. Nervous, but genuine. People respond to that. Nina drank her wine, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions in her chest. Fear. Exhaustion. Something that might have been pride, which was stupid, because all she'd done was survive a dinner party. What happened to your mother? Roman asked suddenly. Nina's hand tightened on her glass. Cancer, 3 years ago. And your father? Never in the picture. Mom raised me alone. Nina stared into her wine. She worked 3 jobs to pay for my training, cleaned offices at night, waited tables during the day, taught beginner ballet classes on weekends. I was going to make it worth it, going to dance with ABT or City Ballet, make her proud. What happened? I was good, not great. Good enough for coursework maybe, but not soloist material. Nina's throat tightened. I aged out before I could get a contract, spent a year auditioning, getting rejected, watching girls younger and better take the spots I wanted. Mom got diagnosed right around the time I figured out dancing professionally wasn't going to happen. So you opened a studio? With her life insurance money, yeah. She made me promise I wouldn't waste it on medical bills that wouldn't save her. Said she wanted me to have something that was mine. Nina blinked hard against tears that had no business falling here, now, in front of this man. The studio was supposed to be her legacy. A way to keep ballet alive, even though neither of us got to dance the way we dreamed about. Roman was quiet for a long moment. And Josh? Different father, Mom's brief attempt at a relationship when I was 12. It lasted 6 months. She raised him alone too, but by then she was tired. Sick, even though we didn't know it yet. Nina's jaw tightened. I practically raised Josh myself. Made sure he went to school, helped with homework, kept him out of trouble. Or tried to. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. He's 21, he's still a kid. He's old enough to understand consequences. Roman stood, refilled his glass. You're not his mother, Nina. You don't owe him your life. He's all I have left. No? Roman turned, fixed her with that intense stare. He's all you've convinced yourself you have left. There's a difference. The words hit harder than they should have. Nina set down her wine glass before she threw it. I should go to bed, she said, standing. Thank you for the wine and the unsolicited therapy. Nina. She stopped at the bedroom door, didn't turn around. You did well tonight, Roman said quietly. Better than I expected. Better than you probably believe. Nina closed the door without responding, leaned against it, and tried to remember who she'd been before she walked into Roman Voss's world and let it swallow her whole. The next morning started with Margaret arriving at 8 a.m. with another rolling rack of clothes. Dinner tonight with investors, she said, already pulling options. We're going sophisticated but approachable. These people need to believe Roman's softening, becoming someone they can do business with. Is he? Nina asked, accepting the coffee Margaret's assistant handed her. Softening? Margaret gave her a look. Honey, men like Roman Voss don't soften. They just get better at hiding the sharp edges. The dress Margaret selected was navy blue, elegant without being flashy. Less armor than the gala gown, more like a uniform for a job Nina still didn't fully understand. The investor dinner was at a steakhouse that probably didn't have prices on the menu. Nina arrived to find Roman already seated with 3 men who looked like they'd stepped out of a business magazine. Expensive suits, careful haircuts, watches that cost more than cars. Gentlemen, Roman said as Nina approached, this is Nina Vale. Nina, this is Robert Carlyle, James Park, and Thomas Whitmore. They're considering investing in my new development project. Nina shook hands, smiled, took the seat Roman pulled out for her. The men's eyes tracked her every move, assessing. Miss Vale, Carlyle said, Roman mentioned you work in arts education? I run a ballet studio. Nina accepted a menu she wouldn't order from. Roman had already made it clear he'd handle everything. We focus on classical technique for students aged 6 through 18. Admirable. Carlyle's tone suggested he found it anything but. Must be quite different from Roman's usual world. The trap was obvious. Admit she didn't belong here, or pretend she knew things she didn't. Every world has its own discipline, Nina said carefully. Ballet requires precision, control, the ability to make something difficult look effortless. I imagine finance requires similar skills. Park laughed. She's not wrong, though our mistakes don't usually result in torn ligaments. Just torn portfolios, Whitmore added. The conversation shifted to business, development timelines, permit approvals, projected returns. Nina listened more than she spoke, watching how Roman operated. He was patient, methodical, letting the investors talk themselves into corners before offering solutions that always seemed to benefit him more than them. Halfway through dinner, Carlyle's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. Problem? Roman asked. My daughter. She's supposed to be at a friend's house, but apparently there's some drama. Carlyle looked at Nina. You work with teenage girls. Does it ever get easier? Nina smiled. Not in my experience, but they're usually smarter than we give them credit for. Sometimes the drama is them testing boundaries to see who's paying attention. Carlyle's expression shifted, became less calculating. You have kids? No, but I teach about 60 students. You learn to read between the lines pretty fast. What would you do? If she was your student having drama at a friend's house? Nina considered. Depends on the drama. But usually I'd call and ask directly what's wrong. Make it clear she can tell me the truth without getting in trouble for the asking. Most kids just want to know someone's listening. Carlyle stared at his phone for a long moment, then excused himself to make a call. When he came back 15 minutes later, his whole demeanor had changed. She needed a ride home. Friends' parents were fighting. She was uncomfortable. You were right. She just needed someone to ask. Roman's hand found Nina's under the table, squeezed briefly. Approval. The rest of the dinner went smoothly. By the time dessert arrived, all three investors had verbally committed to Roman's project, pending contract review. In the car afterward, Roman looked almost pleased. That thing with Carlyle's daughter, he said. Quick thinking. I wasn't thinking, I was answering honestly. Even better. Roman's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression going flat. I need to handle something. Marcus will take you home. What kind of something? The kind you don't need to know about. Roman met her eyes. Remember the contract, Nina. Some parts of my world aren't your concern. He had the driver pull over at the next light, stepped out, and disappeared into the night like he'd never been there at all. Nina spent the drive back to the tower, trying not to imagine what something meant. Trying not to think about the fact that the man she'd just had dinner with probably had people who handled his violence for him. Trying not to wonder when she'd stopped being terrified and started being curious instead. The art gallery opening Friday night was different. Smaller crowd, younger energy, the kind of pretentious atmosphere where everyone pretended to understand abstract paintings that looked like someone had sneezed paint onto canvas. Roman moved through the gallery with Nina on his arm, nodding at the appropriate pieces, making the appropriate noises. He bought 3 paintings, all from the same emerging artist. A young woman who looked like she might pass out when Roman's assistant handed her the check. You didn't even ask the price, Nina said when they moved to the next room. I don't care about the price. I care about what it looks like when people talk about tonight. Roman Voss, supporting emerging artists, contributing to culture. He stopped in front of a canvas that was just blue. Different shades of blue, but still. This is all performance, Nina. Every check I write, every hand I shake, it's building a narrative. The narrative that you're not a criminal? Roman's jaw tightened. The narrative that I'm more than what people whisper about. A woman in her 30s approached, champagne in hand, smile sharp enough to cut. Roman, didn't expect to see you here. Thought contemporary art was too lowbrow for your tastes. Evelyn. Roman's voice went cold. I'm broadening my horizons. I can see that. Evelyn's eyes raked over Nina with undisguised contempt. New acquisition? New companion, Roman corrected. Nina Vale, this is Evelyn Marsh. She runs the Harper Gallery downtown. Ran, Evelyn corrected, her smile brittle, before Roman decided my lease was worth more to him than our partnership. The tension could have been cut with a knife. Your gallery was losing money, Roman said flatly. I made a business decision. You made a personal decision because I wouldn't sleep with you. Nina felt Roman go rigid beside her. That's a lie, and you know it. Is it? Evelyn turned to Nina. Be careful, sweetheart. Roman collects pretty things until he's bored with them, then he discards them. You're just the latest in a long line. Evelyn? Roman's voice was deadly quiet. Walk away. Or what? You'll ruin me more than you already have? Evelyn drained her champagne. You're a thug in an expensive suit, Roman. Buying paintings and taking your little pet to galleries doesn't change what you are. She stalked off before Roman could respond. Nina could feel the rage rolling off him in waves. Roman, don't. He pulled out his phone, typed something fast. We're leaving. We just got here. I said we're leaving. He grabbed her hand, not gently, and pulled her toward the exit. Marcus was waiting with the car. Roman didn't speak the entire ride back to the tower, his hand still gripping Nina's like he was afraid she'd vanish if he let go. Upstairs, he paced the apartment like a caged animal while Nina watched from the sofa. She's lying, he said finally. Evelyn. About everything. I ended her lease because her gallery was hemorrhaging money, and I had a better use for the space. The rest is fiction she invented because she can't handle failure. Okay. Okay? Roman spun to face her. That's it? You believe me? I don't know you well enough not to believe you. Nina kicked off her heels, tucked her feet under her. But I know what it looks like when someone's trying to hurt you by lying, and that's what she was doing. Whether the lie is about sex or money or something else, I don't know. I don't care. Roman stared at her. You should care. You should be wondering if I'm the kind of man who ruins women for rejecting him. Are you? No. Then we're done here. Nina stood. Look, I don't know what your history with Evelyn is. I don't know what you've done or haven't done. But I know you've been careful with me. Professional. Even when you could have pushed for more, you haven't. So either you're playing a long game I don't understand, or you're actually trying to be decent about this arrangement. I'm choosing to believe the latter until you prove otherwise. Roman crossed the room in 3 strides, got close enough that Nina had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You're naive. Maybe, or maybe I'm just tired of being scared all the time. Nina's heart hammered, but she held her ground. You want to be someone different, Roman? Someone people don't just fear? Then be that person, not just at galleries and galas, but here. When no one's watching, when it doesn't benefit you. For a long moment, Roman just looked at her. Then he stepped back, ran a hand through his hair, and laughed. A sound completely devoid of humor. You have no idea what you're asking. Then tell me. I'm asking you to trust someone who's built his entire life on making people afraid. I'm asking you to see me as something other than what I am. What are you? Nina challenged. Roman's expression went bleak. Exactly what Evelyn said, a thug in an expensive suit who destroys things because it's easier than building them. That's what you were, Nina said quietly. Doesn't have to be what you are. She left him standing in the living room and went to bed, her heart still racing, wondering if she'd just made everything better or infinitely worse. Saturday morning, Nina woke to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten note in that same sharp, precise script she'd seen before. Catherine's dinner party is tonight, 7 p.m. Wear the silver dress Margaret left in your closet. We need to talk before we go. Come to my office at 5. R.V. No apology for last night, no acknowledgement of what she'd said or how he'd looked at her like she'd cracked something open he'd spent years keeping sealed. Just orders. Nina crumpled the note, then smoothed it back out, hating that her hands were shaking. She spent the day trying to work remotely, answering emails from parents, reviewing the studio's finances, video calling Sarah to check on classes. Normal things. Things that reminded her she had a life outside this glass tower and the dangerous man who'd bought 6 months of her time. You look tired, Sarah said, peering at the screen. This consulting gig working you too hard? Just adjusting. Nina forced a smile. How's the new choreography coming? Good. The advanced students are picking it up fast. Nina, are you sure you're okay? You seem... I'm fine, really. Nina cut her off before Sarah could probe deeper. I'll try to visit next week, see everyone. After she hung up, Nina sat in the too-quiet apartment and wondered when lying had become so easy. At 4:30, she started getting ready. The silver dress Margaret had left was stunning, floor-length, deceptively simple, the kind of thing that probably cost more than Nina made in a month. It made her look older, sophisticated, like someone who belonged in Catherine Weller's world. At 4:55, Nina took the elevator up 3 floors to Roman's office. Rebecca wasn't at her desk. The reception area was empty, the city sprawling beyond the windows in late afternoon gold. Nina knocked on the double doors. Come in. Roman was at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking at something on his computer that made his jaw tight. He glanced up when Nina entered, and something shifted in his expression. You're early. You said 5. It's 5. It's 4:56. Roman closed his laptop, stood. But close enough. He looked tired. Nina had never seen him look tired before. He always seemed to operate on some frequency that didn't require sleep or food or any of the normal human necessities. But today there were shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. What did we need to talk about? Nina asked. Roman walked to the windows, stood with his back to her. Last night, what Evelyn said. She was trying to hurt you. I told you, I need you to understand something. Roman turned and the look on his face made Nina's breath catch. I'm not a good man, Nina. I've done things. He stopped, jaw working. I've hurt people. Not always because I had to. Sometimes because it was easier. Because fear is a more reliable motivator than respect, and violence is faster than negotiation. Nina stayed quiet, let him talk. Evelyn was telling the truth about the gallery. I did end her lease, not because she wouldn't sleep with me. I never asked, never wanted to, but because she was in the way of a deal I needed to close. Her gallery failing was collateral damage I didn't care enough to prevent. Roman's hands curled into fists. That's who I am, someone who ruins people's dreams because they're inconvenient. And you're telling me this because you said I could be someone different, someone better. Roman's voice went rough. I need you to understand that's not how this works. I can't just decide to be a different person because you think I should be. Nina crossed the room slowly, stopped a few feet from him. I never said it would be easy. I said you could do it. There's a difference. You're being naive again. Maybe. Or maybe you're so used to being what people expect that you can't imagine being anything else. Nina held his gaze. You didn't have to tell me the truth about Evelyn. You could have let me believe your version, but you told me anyway, even though it makes you look worse. Why? Roman was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm tired of people only knowing the parts I let them see. Then stop hiding. Nina took a breath. I'm not saying become a saint. I'm saying stop pretending you're only capable of being a monster. Roman laughed, bitter and sharp. You've known me 3 weeks, Nina. You don't know what I'm capable of. No. But I know what you've chosen not to do. Nina gestured between them. You could have made this arrangement something ugly. You had all the power, all the leverage. You could have demanded anything, but you didn't. That's a choice, Roman. That counts. It's a low bar. It's a start. Roman stared at her, something raw and uncertain in his expression. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it, the moment breaking. Car's ready. We should go. The ride to Catherine Weller's house took 40 minutes. Out of the city center into neighborhoods where the houses sat behind gates and the driveways could fit 10 cars. Catherine's place was more modest than Nina expected. A converted brownstone with ivy climbing the walls and lights glowing warm in the windows. Ground rules, Roman said as Marcus pulled up to the entrance. Catherine's dinner parties are small, 10 people maximum. Everyone there will be someone who matters, culturally, politically, financially. They'll ask invasive questions disguised as polite conversation. Answer honestly when you can, vaguely when you can't. What if they ask about us? Tell them whatever you want. Roman's eyes met hers. I trust your judgment. It was the first time he'd said anything like that. Nina felt the weight of it settle in her chest. Inside Catherine's home was exactly what Nina expected. Elegant, but lived in. Art on every wall, furniture that looked antique and comfortable in equal measure. Catherine herself swept into the entrance hall wearing velvet and pearls, martini in hand. Roman, Nina. She air-kissed both their cheeks. So glad you could make it. Come, everyone's in the library. The library was all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a fire crackling in a massive fireplace despite the mild evening. 7 people were already there, drinks in hand, conversation flowing. Nina recognized 2 of them from the gala, a museum director and a city councilwoman. The others were strangers, but they all had that same look of money and power worn so casually it became invisible. Catherine made introductions. Nina smiled, shook hands, accepted a glass of wine from a server who appeared like magic. Miss Vale, the museum director said. Nina remembered his name was Harrison. Catherine mentioned you're Maria Vale's daughter. Your mother was extraordinary. Thank you. She'd be happy to know people still remember her. Impossible to forget. I saw her dance Aurora when I was barely out of college. Changed my entire understanding of what performance could be. Harrison's eyes were kind. Do you dance? Not anymore. I teach now. She runs an excellent studio, Catherine interjected. Classical training, from what I understand. We need more of that. Too many programs focus on contemporary work and forget the foundation. The conversation flowed easily, touching on ballet, arts funding, upcoming exhibitions. Roman stayed close, but mostly quiet, letting Nina handle the social navigation. She could feel him watching her, assessing, but it didn't feel predatory. It felt almost protective. Dinner was served in a dining room that seated 12 comfortably. Nina found herself between Harrison and a woman named Diane, who ran some kind of nonprofit focused on arts education for underprivileged kids. We're always looking for partner organizations, Diane said. Would your studio be interested in offering scholarships? We have grant money available for programs that commit to serving low-income students. Nina's heart jumped. I'd love that. We've tried to offer financial aid, but it's been limited. Let's talk specifics after dinner. I think we could structure something that works for both of us. Across the table, Roman caught her eye. He looked almost pleased. The conversation ranged from politics to culture to the kind of gossip that people with power pretended not to care about. Nina mostly listened, occasionally offering opinions when directly asked, trying to read the undercurrents beneath the polite surface. Catherine, seated at the head of the table with Roman to her right, seemed to be conducting some kind of test. She asked about his development projects, his business expansion, his plans for the waterfront property everyone was talking about. I'm moving away from certain revenue streams, Roman said carefully, focusing on legitimate real estate development, private security services for corporations, venture capital investments in tech startups. Away from what? The councilwoman asked, eyebrow raised. The parts of your business that don't look good in annual reports? The table went quiet. Roman's expression didn't change. Away from the parts that limit my ability to operate in spaces like this one, councilwoman. I'm sure you understand the value of evolution. I understand the value of honesty. She took a sip of wine. Are we supposed to pretend you're suddenly legitimate because you're dating a ballet teacher and buying paintings? Helen, Catherine said, voice sharp. That's enough. Is it? Because I think it's a fair question. Helen looked at Nina. Miss Vale, do you know what Roman did to fund his first real estate deal? How he convinced the previous owner to sell? Nina's stomach tightened. No. The owner's daughter was assaulted, broke both arms, shattered her jaw. She recovered eventually, but the trauma made the family desperate to leave the city. Roman bought the property for half its value. Helen's smile was sharp. That's who you're having dinner with, Catherine. A man who built his empire on fear and violence. Roman's hand tightened on his glass, but his voice stayed level. That deal was 15 years ago. The assault had nothing to do with me, and the investigation confirmed it. But I won't pretend I didn't benefit from their misfortune, or that I cared enough to pay what the property was actually worth. The honesty shocked everyone, Nina included. You're admitting it? Helen asked. I'm admitting I saw an opportunity and took it. I'm admitting I didn't think about the human cost, only the financial gain. Roman set down his glass. I'm also telling you that's not how I operate anymore. Not because I've suddenly developed a conscience, but because I've realized that kind of business model has limitations. I want to build something that lasts, that requires different methods. And we're supposed to believe you've changed? Helen's voice dripped skepticism. I don't care if you believe it or not, Councilwoman. I care if Catherine believes it. Roman looked at the older woman. You asked me 3 months ago what I wanted from you, from this world. I told you access, credibility, the ability to be taken seriously as someone with legitimate interests. You said you'd consider it if I proved I was willing to change. Catherine studied him over her wine glass. And have you? I've divested from 3 businesses that were profitable but ethically questionable. I've invested in 4 startups focused on green technology and affordable housing. I've funded scholarships for 15 students at the Arts Academy you oversee. Roman's voice was steady. I've also stopped responding to insults with violence, stopped using fear as my primary negotiating tactic, started trying to build partnerships instead of crushing competition. Why? Harrison asked. What made you decide to change? Roman's eyes flicked to Nina, just for a second. Because someone suggested it was possible. The weight of every gaze in the room shifted to Nina. She felt her face flush. Well, Catherine said into the silence, that's more honesty than I expected tonight. Helen, apologize for being rude at my table. Catherine. Now Helen. The councilwoman looked mutinous but complied. My apologies, Mr. Voss. And Miss Vale. The tension broke slowly. Conversation resumed, though the easy warmth from earlier was gone. Nina pushed food around her plate. Appetite vanished. After dinner, Catherine pulled Nina aside while the others moved to the sitting room for coffee and dessert. Walk with me, she said, not asking. They stepped out into a garden lit by subtle pathway lights, the city noise distant and muffled. You're good for him, Catherine said without preamble. I barely know him. Doesn't matter. You make him want to be better. That's rare. Catherine stopped by a fountain, turned to face Nina. I've known Roman Voss for 8 years. Watched him build an empire through ruthlessness and strategic violence. He's brilliant, terrifying, and completely lacking in what most people would call humanity. But tonight, when Helen attacked him, he didn't strike back. He was honest. Vulnerable, even. That's not the Roman I know. Nina didn't know what to say. Whatever you're doing, whether you mean to or not, keep doing it. Roman has potential to be truly powerful in ways that don't involve fear. But he needs an anchor, something that makes legitimacy worth more than the alternative. Catherine's eyes were sharp. Can you be that? I don't know. I'm not. Nina struggled for words. I didn't sign up to change anyone. I'm just trying to survive 6 months. 6 months? Catherine's eyebrow rose. Is that all this is? A contract? That's all it's supposed to be. Supposed to be, Catherine smiled slightly. But it's already more, isn't it? Before Nina could answer, Roman appeared in the doorway. Everything all right? Fine, Catherine said. I was just telling Nina how much I enjoyed her company tonight. You should bring her to the museum gala next month. I'll consider it. Roman's hand settled on Nina's back. We should go, early morning tomorrow. In the car, neither of them spoke. Nina stared out the window, trying to process everything that had happened. The accusations, Roman's honesty, Catherine's suggestion that this was somehow more than a business arrangement. I'm sorry, Roman said finally. Nina turned. For what? For Helen. For dragging you into that. His jaw was tight. I should have warned you that Catherine's dinners are sometimes more interrogation than entertainment. You were honest with them. I was honest because lying would have been pointless. Helen's done her research. Catherine knows more than she lets on. Pretending to be something I'm not wouldn't have worked. Roman looked at her. Besides, you said I should stop hiding. Seemed like good practice. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't. Roman's voice went quiet. But it was necessary. If I want legitimacy, I have to acknowledge what I've been. Own it instead of pretending it didn't happen. Nina thought about that. About the courage it took to admit ugly truths in front of people whose respect you wanted. Catherine said I'm good for you. Catherine says a lot of things. Is she right? Roman was silent for a long time. I don't know, but I know I'm trying harder because you're around. Whether that's good or just different, he shrugged. Too early to tell. Back at the tower, Nina expected Roman to disappear to his own floor like always. Instead, he followed her into the apartment, poured them both drinks without asking. Tell me about your mother, he said, handing her a glass. Nina blinked at the shift. Why? Because everyone tonight talked about her like she was a legend, and you've barely mentioned her beyond the cancer. Roman sat across from her. I want to know who she actually was. Nina curled into the corner of the sofa, cradling her wine. She was tough. Had to be, raising me alone, working constantly. But she was also kind in ways that surprised people. Would give her last $20 to someone who needed it more, even when we were broke. Where did she grow up? Small town in upstate New York. She moved to the city at 17 to train, lived in a studio apartment with 3 other dancers, survived on rice and beans for years. Nina smiled at the memory. She used to tell me stories about sleeping in subway stations when she missed the last train, about sneaking into performances she couldn't afford, about the year she was so poor she heated her apartment with the oven. Sounds like she was a fighter. She was. Right up until the end. Nina's throat tightened. Even when the cancer was everywhere, when the doctor said there was nothing left to try, she kept fighting, kept telling me she'd make it to my studio opening, that she'd see me teach my first class in a space that was mine. Did she? She died 2 weeks before we opened. Never got to see it. Nina blinked hard. I keep thinking she'd be disappointed, that I'm wasting what she gave me by being here instead of there. Roman set down his glass, leaned forward. You're keeping your studio alive, keeping 60 kids in classes, 5 instructors employed. You think your mother would be disappointed in that? I think she'd wonder why I'm playing dress-up with a criminal instead of actually teaching. You're saving your brother, protecting what she built. She'd understand that. Roman's voice was surprisingly gentle. And for what it's worth, I don't think you're wasting anything. You've handled every situation I've thrown at you with more grace and intelligence than most people who've been in this world for years. Nina looked at him, at this man who terrified and confused her in equal measure. Why do you care? Really? You could have hired anyone to stand next to you at parties. Why does it matter if I handle things well? Roman was quiet for a long time. Because most people in my life are afraid of me. They do what I say because the alternative is worse. You're afraid too. I can see it. But you push back anyway. You call me out when I'm being a bastard. You suggest I could be better, like it's actually possible. He met her eyes. That's rare, Nina. In my world, that's almost unheard of. So I'm what, a novelty? You're a reminder that there's a different way to live, that fear isn't the only currency that matters. Roman stood, ran a hand through his hair. I should go. Let you get some sleep. Roman? Nina stood too. That thing Catherine asked about being your anchor. I can't. I know. You signed up for 6 months, not a lifetime of reforming a bastard. Roman's smile was sad. I'm not asking you to be anything more than what we agreed to, Nina. Whatever changes I make, that's on me, not you. He left before she could respond, the door closing quietly behind him. Nina stood in the empty apartment, holding her wine, and wondered when this had stopped being just a job and started feeling like something she didn't have words for. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm. Events 3 or 4 times a week, more galas, business dinners, gallery openings, a theater premiere where Roman sat through an experimental play that made no sense but clapped politely anyway. Nina learned the names and faces of people who mattered, figured out how to navigate conversations that were really negotiations. Got better at reading the dynamics of rooms full of predators dressed in evening wear. Roman was different too. Still controlled, still dangerous, but something had shifted after Catherine's dinner. He was more open with Nina, less likely to shut her out when business turned dark. He asked her opinion on things, which investors to trust, whether a particular development project seemed sound, how to handle a business partner who was becoming a problem. Why are you asking me? Nina said one night after an event. I don't know anything about real estate or finance. You know people. You can read a room better than most of my advisors. Roman was reviewing contracts at the dining table. Nina curled up on the sofa with a book. That investor tonight, Patterson. What did you think? Nina thought about the man who'd spent dinner asking overly personal questions and watching her like she was prey. I think he's looking for weakness. Yours, mine, doesn't matter. He wants something to leverage. That's what I thought, too. Roman made a note on the contract. I'm declining his offer. These moments of collaboration were becoming normal. So was the way Roman's hand would settle on her back at events. Possessive, but careful. The way he always made sure she had an exit route if things got uncomfortable. The way he'd check in after difficult interactions. make sure she was okay even when he was dealing with his own stress. It should have stayed professional, should have remained exactly what the contract said, a business arrangement with clear boundaries. But then Nina's studio had a break-in. Sarah called at 2 in the morning, voice shaking. "Nina, someone broke in. They destroyed everything. Mirrors, bars, the sound system. There's graffiti on the walls, horrible things. The police are here, but they're saying it looks random. Probably kids, but Nina, I don't think..." Nina was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. "I'm coming. Don't touch anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She was halfway to the elevator when she remembered she didn't have a car here. Cursed, started to call for a ride, then stopped. Roman answered on the first ring. "Nina, what's wrong?" "My studio. Someone broke in. I need..." Her voice cracked. "I need to get there. I'm on my way down." He appeared 2 minutes later wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Marcus was with him, already on his phone coordinating. "We'll take my car," Roman said. "Marcus, call our security team. I want to know who did this and why by sunrise." The drive took 15 minutes. Nina spent it trying not to fall apart, hands shaking in her lap. Roman drove in silence, but his jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the wheel. The studio looked like a war zone. Every mirror shattered, bars torn from the walls, the wood floor gouged and stained. The graffiti was violent, sexual, the kind of things that made Nina's skin crawl. Sarah was sitting on the front steps crying. 2 police officers were taking photos, looking bored. Nina stumbled out of the car, stared at the destruction of everything her mother had worked for, and felt something break inside her. Roman's arm came around her shoulders, solid and grounding. "Breathe. We'll fix this. It's destroyed. Everything is..." "We'll fix it," Roman repeated, voice hard. "Marcus, coordinate with the officers. I want their report. I also want our team to do a parallel investigation." He looked at the lead officer. "This wasn't random. Someone targeted this location specifically." The officer bristled. "Sir, we don't know that..." "Look at the damage. Look at the graffiti." Roman's voice went cold. This was personal. Someone sent a message. Find out who. Nina walked through the studio in a daze, Sarah trailing behind her. The destruction was complete, methodical. Whoever did this had taken their time, made sure nothing was salvageable. "The recital is in 3 weeks, Sarah said, voice breaking. "The kids have been practicing for months. Nina, what do we do?" Nina didn't have an answer. She sat down in the middle of the ruined floor and tried to remember how to breathe. Roman found her there an hour later. The police were gone, Marcus was coordinating with someone on the phone, and Sarah had gone home after Nina promised to call in the morning. "Come on," Roman said gently. "Nothing more you can do here tonight." "This is my fault." Nina's voice sounded hollow. "Someone's trying to hurt you through me, just like Marcus warned. We don't know that yet." "Don't we?" Nina looked up at him. "This didn't happen before I moved into your tower, before I started appearing at your events. Someone's sending a message." Roman crouched beside her, took her hands. "Then I'll send one back. Whoever did this won't get away with it." "That's not..." Nina pulled her hands away. "Violence doesn't fix this, Roman. It doesn't rebuild my studio or help my students or make any of this okay. No, but money does." Roman stood, pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my contractor. He'll have a crew here by morning. The studio will be rebuilt in 2 weeks, better than it was before. I can't afford..." "I'm covering it. All of it. Insurance, repairs, replacements, lost revenue." Roman's voice left no room for argument. "This happened because of me. I'll fix it." Nina wanted to fight him, wanted to insist she could handle it herself, wanted to maintain some kind of independence. But she was so tired, and the studio was so destroyed, and she didn't know how to fix this alone. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Roman helped her to her feet, led her back to the car. On the drive back to the tower, Nina stared out the window and tried not to think about what this meant. About the fact that someone had hurt her to hurt him. About the fact that being in Roman Voss's orbit made her a target. About the fact that despite everything, the fear, the danger, the complete upending of her life, she was starting to care what happened to him. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. By morning, Roman's contractor had a crew at the studio assessing damage. By noon, Marcus had answers. Nina sat in Roman's office while he reviewed the security footage Marcus's team had pulled from nearby businesses. She watched Roman's face go from controlled to lethal in the span of 3 seconds. "Victor Hastings," he said flatly. Marcus nodded. "Two of his guys, we ID'd them from the footage. They were sloppy, didn't bother hiding their faces, probably figured a ballet studio wouldn't have security cameras nearby." "Why?" Nina asked, though she already knew. "Because Roman turned down his investment proposal?" "Because I embarrassed him at the gala, made him look small in front of people who matter." Roman's voice was ice. "He went after you to prove he could reach me. What are you going to do?" Nina's stomach knotted. She'd seen Roman angry before, but this was different. This was controlled rage, the kind that preceded violence. Roman stood, walked to the windows. "What I should have done 3 years ago, when he first became a problem. Roman, he hurt you, Nina, destroyed something your mother built." Roman turned, and his eyes were cold enough to burn. "That requires a response. Not violence, please." Nina stood too, moved closer. "You're trying to be different, remember? Trying to build something legitimate. Beating up Victor Hastings destroys all of that. So does letting him think he can attack what's mine without consequences." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made her chest tight. "There are other ways to make him pay," Nina said. "Legal ways, business ways, ways that don't involve anyone getting hurt." Roman stared at her for a long moment. "You're asking me to be the bigger person. I'm asking you to be the person you said you wanted to be. The one Catherine might actually respect." Nina took a breath. "What would hurt Hastings more, getting beat up, or watching you take everything he's built?" Something shifted in Roman's expression. "You're dangerous, you know that?" "Why?" "Because you make me think before I act. That's not something I'm used to." Roman pulled out his phone, made a call. "Rebecca, get me everything on Victor Hastings. Financial records, business partners, pending deals. I want to know every pressure point he has by end of day." He hung up, looked at Nina. "This is your fault. If he ends up bankrupt and humiliated, that's on you. I can live with that." The corner of Roman's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "The studio will be ready in 10 days. I'm having the contractor add a security system, cameras, alarms, the works. No one touches it again without us knowing." "Roman, that's too much. It's necessary, and it's happening." His voice softened slightly. "You've got a recital in 3 weeks. The kids need their space back. Let me handle this." Nina wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some kind of independence, but the truth was she needed help, and Roman was offering it, and refusing out of pride would hurt her students more than it would prove any point. "Thank you," she said quietly. Roman's hand came up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was gentle, almost tender, completely at odds with the lethal focus from moments ago. "You're welcome." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression going tight. "I need to handle something. Marcus will take you back to the apartment. Stay there until I call. Increased security protocols are in effect." "What does that mean?" "It means Hastings made his move, now I'm making mine. Until I know who else might be feeling brave, you stay where I know you're safe." Roman was already moving toward his desk, back to business. "I'll see you tonight." Nina left, but the warmth of his fingers against her skin lingered. The next week was tense. Roman worked 20-hour days, meetings, and phone calls bleeding into each other. Nina caught glimpses of him, heading out at dawn, returning after midnight, looking progressively more exhausted. She wanted to ask what he was doing, but Marcus's presence in the apartment, always there now, always watching, suggested she was better off not knowing. The studio reconstruction moved at impossible speed. Nina visited twice, watched crews rebuild better floors, install new mirrors, set up a sound system that made the old one look like a toy. Sarah and the other instructors were overwhelmed, grateful, confused about where the money was coming from. "Your consulting client must be incredibly generous," Sarah said, running her hand along a new bar. "Nina, this is professional-grade equipment. This is what companies install, not private studios." "He values quality work," Nina said, which wasn't exactly a lie. On day 6, Catherine Weller called Nina directly. "I heard about the studio," she said without preamble. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. The studio's being rebuilt. By Roman, I assume." Catherine's voice held something Nina couldn't identify. "Have you seen the news today?" "No, why?" Victor Hastings' development company just lost its three biggest investors. His permits for the waterfront project were mysteriously revoked, and the bank called in his loans, all of them, due immediately. Catherine paused. He's finished, Nina. Completely destroyed. And everyone knows Roman did it. Nina's stomach dropped. Is that bad? That depends on your perspective. From a business standpoint, it's brilliant. Roman dismantled a rival without throwing a single punch. From a perception standpoint, Catherine sighed. People are scared again, reminded that Roman Voss can destroy you without ever raising his voice. But he did it legally, through business channels. Doesn't matter, the effect is the same. Victor's ruined, and everyone knows it was retaliation. Catherine's voice gentled. I'm not criticizing. Victor deserved it for what he did to your studio. I'm just warning you that Roman's legitimacy campaign just took a hit. People don't trust wolves even when they wear sheep's clothing. After Catherine hung up, Nina sat in the too-quiet apartment and wondered if she'd made things worse by asking Roman not to use violence. That night, Roman came home at 7 for the first time in a week. He looked like hell, exhausted, wound tight, running on caffeine and spite. I saw the news, Nina said. Roman poured himself a drink, downed it in one go. Did you? Catherine called. Said you destroyed Hastings. I did. Roman poured another drink, stared at it. He'll be bankrupt by month's end. His company's dissolved. His reputation is shot. He'll spend the next 5 years trying to recover and never quite manage it. Do you feel better? Roman looked at her, something raw in his expression. No, I feel tired, but I feel like I sent the right message. Hurt what's mine and I'll take everything you have. Nina crossed the room, took the glass from his hand, set it aside. You need sleep. I need to make sure no one else gets ideas about testing me. Roman. Nina put her hand on his chest, felt his heart hammering beneath her palm. You proved your point. Now rest. For a moment she thought he'd argue. Then he just nodded, let her lead him to the sofa, collapsed into it like his strings had been cut. Nina sat beside him, not quite touching but close enough to feel his warmth. Did you really revoke his permits legally? Technically, yes. Greased a few palms, called in favors, reminded people that approving Hastings' projects would be inadvisable. Roman closed his eyes. It's a gray area, Nina. Legal, but not exactly clean. But nobody got hurt. Nobody got hurt, he confirmed. Just financially ruined, which is arguably worse. At least broken bones heal. They sat in silence for a while. Nina watched the city lights beyond the windows, tried to process the fact that Roman had destroyed a man's entire career to protect her studio. I keep thinking, Roman said quietly, about what you said. About being the person Catherine might respect. About building something instead of destroying it. He laughed, bitter. Then something like this happens, and I remember destruction is what I'm good at. You rebuilt my studio in a week. You've invested in startups and affordable housing. You've funded scholarships. Nina turned to look at him. You're capable of building, Roman. You just keep getting pulled back into the other thing. Because the other thing works. It's faster. It's what people understand. Roman opened his eyes, met her gaze. You scare the hell out of me, you know that? Why? Because you make me want things I don't know how to have. Legitimacy. Respect without fear, a life that doesn't require constant violence. His hand found hers, threaded their fingers together. You make me think it's possible. Nina's heart hammered against her ribs. Maybe it is. And maybe I'm just fooling myself. Maybe this is all I'll ever be, someone who destroys things and calls it protection. Then why are you trying so hard to be different? Roman looked at their joined hands. Because for the first time in my life, I have something worth changing for. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning Nina wasn't ready to examine. The 6 months are almost halfway done, she said, not sure why she was bringing it up. 3 months left. I know. What happens after? Roman's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I don't know. What do you want to happen? Nina didn't have an answer. 2 months ago, she would have said she wanted to run, get her life back. Forget Roman Voss existed. Now the thought of leaving made her chest ache. Don't know either, she admitted. Roman pulled her closer until her head rested against his shoulder. Then we'll figure it out when we get there. They stayed like that until Roman fell asleep, exhausted and still wound too tight. Nina extracted herself carefully, covered him with a blanket, and went to bed wondering when this had stopped being an arrangement and started being something she didn't have words for. The studio reopened 2 days before the recital. The kids screamed when they saw it, bouncing around the perfect floors and staring at themselves in pristine mirrors. Parents cried. Sarah hugged Nina so hard her ribs creaked. "I don't know how you did this," Sarah said, wiping her eyes. "But thank you. Thank you so much." Roman showed up for the recital in jeans and a button-down, looking completely out of place among the parents in their casual clothes and the kids in their performance costumes. Nina spotted him in the back row sitting next to Marcus, both of them looking vaguely uncomfortable. The recital went perfectly. 60 kids performing pieces they'd worked on for months, their faces glowing with pride. Nina watched from the wings, her heart full in ways she hadn't expected. Afterward, as parents collected their children and instructors broke down the temporary stage, Roman approached. "That was good," he said. "The kids are talented. They worked hard." Nina was still riding the high of a successful performance. "Thank you for being here. You didn't have to. I wanted to see what I'd helped rebuild." Roman looked around the studio, at the kids still pirouetting across the floor, the parents chatting and laughing. "This is what you fight for, why you were willing to sign your life away for 6 months. It's my mother's legacy. It's more than that." Roman's hand settled on her back, familiar now. "It's proof that beautiful things can exist, that not everything has to be bought with violence or fear." Nina looked up at him, at this man who terrified and confused her, who destroyed careers and rebuilt studios, who was trying so hard to be someone different. "You're not as bad as you think you are." "I'm exactly as bad as I think I am. I'm just trying to be better." Roman's eyes held hers. "Because of you." Before Nina could respond, a crash from the other room shattered the moment. They both turned to see one of the kids had knocked over a prop. Nothing serious, but the spell was broken. Roman stepped back, professional distance sliding back into place. "I should go. You've got cleanup to handle." "Roman, I'll see you tomorrow. We have the museum gala." He was already heading for the door, Marcus falling into step beside him. Nina watched him leave and tried to ignore the ache in her chest. That night, alone in the apartment, Nina finally let herself think about what was happening. She was falling for Roman Voss. Not the reputation, not the money, not the power, the actual man underneath all of it. The one who showed up to children's recitals and tried to destroy people without violence and looked at her like she was something precious. It was stupid, dangerous, completely against every reasonable instinct she had. And it was happening anyway. Her phone buzzed, a text from Roman. "Thank you for letting me see that tonight. Reminded me what's worth protecting." Nina stared at the message, typed and deleted 3 responses, finally settled on, "Thank you for protecting it." His response came immediately. Always. The next 3 weeks blurred together. More events, more business dinners, more moments where Roman looked at her like she was the only real thing in a world of performance and calculation. The line between professional arrangement and something deeper got progressively more blurred. Then Josh called. Nina had been avoiding her brother since the arrangement started, ignoring his calls and texts, too angry and too busy to deal with his guilt. But he kept calling, kept leaving messages, until finally she answered. "Nina, thank God." Josh sounded frantic. "I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Are you okay? Sarah said you've been gone, that you're doing consulting work, but you won't answer my calls and I'm worried." "I'm fine, Josh. I've been busy." "Busy with what?" "Nina, please talk to me. I know you're angry about the debt. I know I screwed up, but you can't just disappear." "I didn't disappear. I'm handling it." "How?" "The payment plan Voss set up is insane. I'm supposed to pay him $5,000 a month for 5 years. I don't have that kind of money. I'm working 2 jobs and I still can't." Josh's voice broke. "Nina, I'm drowning. I need help." Nina's stomach twisted. "What do you mean you're paying $5,000 a month? You're not paying anything." Silence. Then, "What?" "The debt's cleared, Josh. Voss agreed to wipe it completely. You don't owe him anything." "That's not... Nina, that's not what he told me. He said I had 5 years to pay it back, that if I missed a payment, he'd come after both of us. I've been killing myself working to make those payments." Josh stopped. "Wait, if the debt's cleared, why did he tell me that?" Because Nina had asked him to. Because she'd wanted Josh to learn consequences, to feel the weight of his mistake. "I'll handle it," Nina said, her voice hollow. "I'll talk to Voss." "Nina, what's going on? What did you do?" She hung up before he could ask more questions, her hands shaking. Roman was in his office when she stormed in, bypassing Rebecca's protests. He looked up from his computer, took one look at her face, and stood. "What happened?"
"Josh called. You told him he had to pay back the debt, $5,000 a month for 5 years. Nina's voice shook with rage. "I asked you to make him think he was responsible, not torture him. He's working 2 jobs, learning what real consequences feel like. What's the problem?" "The problem is he's destroying himself over debt that doesn't exist." Nina's hands curled into fists. "I wanted him to learn responsibility, not break himself trying to pay back money he doesn't actually owe."
Roman's expression went flat. "You wanted him to feel it. Those were your exact words. This is what that looks like. This is cruel. This is effective. Josh hasn't gambled since the payment plan started. He's working hard, paying attention to money, learning that actions have real consequences." Roman crossed his arms. "Isn't that what you wanted? Not like this. Not—" Nina's voice cracked. "He sounded terrified, Roman. He thinks if he misses a payment, you'll come after both of us." "Good. Fear is an excellent motivator." The casual cruelty of it knocked the air from Nina's lungs. "Is that what I am to you? Another person to manipulate? Another tool to prove how powerful you are?" Roman's jaw tightened. "That's not fair, isn't it? You keep talking about changing, about being better, but the second it's convenient, you fall right back into fear and manipulation." Nina stepped closer, too angry to be scared. "You're using my brother to teach me a lesson too, aren't you? Showing me what happens when people cross you. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" "It's me doing exactly what you asked." Roman's voice rose, control slipping. "You said you wanted Josh to learn. I made that happen. You said you didn't want violence. I'm using economics instead. You can't have it both ways, Nina. Either I'm the person who handles problems my way, or I'm someone else entirely. Pick one." "I pick someone who doesn't torture my brother to prove a point. Your brother gambled away $300,000 of my money. He deserves every ounce of fear he's feeling." They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the space between them crackling with anger and something more complicated. "Call him," Nina said, voice cold. "Tell him the truth. Tell him the debt's cleared and he doesn't owe you anything." "No." "Roman, no." His voice was iron. "Josh has 2 more years of payments. He'll finish what he started, or he'll learn what happens when people quit on their obligations to me. Those are his options." Nina felt something crack inside her chest. "Then I'm done." Roman went very still. "What?" "I'm done. With this arrangement, with you, with all of it." Nina pulled off the diamond bracelet she'd worn to that morning's brunch, set it on his desk. "I'll move out tonight. You can find someone else to stand next to at your parties. You have a contract. Sue me. I don't care." Nina headed for the door. "Enjoy your empire, Roman. I hope it keeps you warm at night." She made it to the elevator before he caught up, his hand on her arm spinning her around. "Don't do this," Roman said, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "Nina, please." "Why? Why should I stay?" Nina pulled her arm free. "So you can keep proving that power matters more than people? That fear is more valuable than trust? I can't watch you be this person, Roman. I can't stand next to you and pretend it's okay." "I'll call Josh. I'll tell him the truth." "It's too late." "It's not. I'll fix this." "You can't fix what you are." The words came out louder than Nina intended, echoing in the marble hallway. "You keep trying to be someone different, someone better, and then the second things get hard, you revert to violence and fear, because that's what you know. That's what feels safe." Roman's face had gone pale. "That's not fair." "Life's not fair. You taught me that." Nina pressed the elevator button. "Find someone else to reform you, Roman. I'm tired." The elevator doors opened. Nina stepped in, pressed the button for the 60th floor, watched Roman standing frozen in the hallway as the doors slid closed between them. In the apartment, she packed mechanically, clothes into suitcases, her mother's photo wrapped carefully in a sweater, the few personal items she'd accumulated. By the time Marcus knocked on the door an hour later, she was ready to go. Miss Vale? I'm leaving, Marcus. You can tell Roman I'll have my lawyer review the contract breach penalties. He's not worried about the contract. Marcus looked uncomfortable. He asked me to tell you he called Josh, told him the truth. The debt's cleared, no more payments. Nina's hand stilled on her suitcase zipper. When? 10 minutes ago. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her a text from Roman. Tell her I fixed it. Tell her I'm sorry. Nina stared at the message, something painful lodging in her throat. He's in his office, Marcus said quietly. Won't see anyone, won't take calls, just sitting there. He hesitated. I've worked for Mr. Voss for 8 years, Miss Vale. I've never seen him like this. Whatever happened, it broke something. That's not my responsibility. No, ma'am. But maybe it's worth considering anyway. Marcus stepped back. Car's downstairs when you're ready, or not. Your choice. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Nina sat on the edge of the bed, surrounded by half-packed suitcases, and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. Nina didn't leave that night. She told herself it was because she was too tired, because it was late, because moving out in the dark felt dramatic and stupid. But the truth sat heavy in her chest. She couldn't walk away without understanding what Roman calling Josh actually meant. She unpacked one suitcase, left the other by the door like a threat or a promise, and spent a sleepless night staring at the ceiling. Morning came gray and cold. Nina showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, her clothes, not the designer pieces Margaret had selected, and took the elevator up to Roman's floor before she could talk herself out of it. Rebecca looked surprised to see her. Miss Vale, Mr. Voss isn't seeing anyone today. He'll see me. Nina walked past the desk, pushed through the double doors before Rebecca could stop her. Roman was at the windows, still wearing yesterday's clothes, a glass of something amber in his hand. He turned when she entered, and the look on his face made her breath catch. He looked wrecked, exhausted, defeated, like something essential had been carved out of him. You're still here, he said quietly. You called Josh. You said to fix it. I fixed it. Roman took a sip of his drink. He was confused, angry, demanded to know what was happening. I told him the truth, that you'd made an arrangement to clear his debt, that the payments were a lesson that went too far, that he doesn't owe me anything. What did he say? That he's an idiot, that you shouldn't have had to sacrifice anything for his mistakes. Roman's jaw tightened. That if I hurt you, he'll find a way to make me pay, which was almost cute considering I could destroy him with a phone call. Despite everything, Nina almost smiled. He's protective when it matters. He loves you. That was obvious. Roman set down his glass. I didn't do the payment plan to torture him, Nina. I did it because you were right. He needed to feel consequences, to understand that his actions affected real people. I thought making him work for it would teach him something. It did. It also terrified him. I know. Roman stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I'm not good at this. At measuring how much pressure is teaching and how much is cruelty. Everything in my world operates on extremes. Either you're in complete control or you've already lost. Nina crossed the room slowly, stopped a few feet from him. You can't treat people like chess pieces, Roman. Josh isn't some rival to be managed. He's a kid who made a stupid mistake. I know that now. Roman met her eyes. But yesterday, when you asked me to call him, my first instinct was to refuse. Not because Josh deserved to keep suffering, but because giving in felt like weakness. Like admitting I was wrong. Were you? Wrong? Yes. The admission seemed to cost him. I let my need for control override basic decency. I used your brother to prove a point that didn't need proving. He took a breath. I'm sorry, Nina. For all of it. Nina had never heard Roman apologize before. Never seen him look uncertain or vulnerable or anything other than completely in command. This version of him, raw and honest and clearly struggling, did something complicated to her heart. I'm sorry too, she said, for what I said yesterday, about you not being able to change. That wasn't fair. It was accurate. Roman's mouth twisted. I keep saying I want to be different, then defaulting to what I know. Fear, control, power. It's pathetic. It's human. Nina moved closer. Change is hard, Roman. Especially when you've spent your whole life building walls and suddenly someone's asking you to tear them down. Is that what you're asking? I don't know what I'm asking anymore. Nina looked at him, really looked, past the expensive clothes and the reputation and the carefully constructed armor. I came here to save my brother. I was supposed to stand next to you at parties for 6 months and walk away. Simple, transactional. And now? Now nothing about this feels simple. Nina's voice went quiet. You scare me, Roman. Not because I think you'll hurt me. You've proven you won't. But because I'm starting to care what happens to you. Whether you succeed at this legitimacy thing, whether you manage to become who you want to be. And that terrifies me more than anything else. Roman closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face. You think you're the only one scared? I've built an empire on knowing exactly who I am and what I'm capable of. Then you show up and suddenly I'm questioning everything, wondering if power matters if you're alone with it, if respect means anything when it's built on fear. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones, gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. I don't know how to do this, he said. How to be the person you make me want to be. How to care about someone more than I care about winning, but I want to learn. If you'll stay long enough to teach me. Nina's hands came up to rest on his chest, felt his heart hammering beneath her palms. I can't fix you, Roman. You have to do that yourself. I know, but maybe you can remind me why it's worth trying. Roman's forehead touched hers. Stay. Please, not because of the contract, not because of Josh. Stay because you want to see if this thing between us could be real. Nina should have said no, should have walked away from the most dangerous man she'd ever met, gone back to her safe life and her studio, and the simple certainty of knowing who she was. Instead, she kissed him. Roman went still for a heartbeat, then kissed her back like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. His hand slid into her hair, tilted her head for better access, and Nina forgot how to think about anything except the way he tasted, the way he held her like she was precious and essential and entirely his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman rested his forehead against hers. That's not an answer, he said. Yes, it is, Nina's hands fisted in his shirt. I'm staying, but not as your employee, not as some arrangement with an end date. Then as what? I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. Nina pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But Roman, if you want this, want me, you have to actually change, not just talk about it. Not just when it's convenient. You have to dismantle the parts of your empire that are built on violence and fear. Roman's expression went serious. That could take years. It could cost me everything. I know. People won't just let me walk away. There will be pushback, danger, attempts to drag me back into what I was. I know that too. Roman studied her face. You're asking me to choose between the empire I built and the person I could become. I'm asking you to choose what kind of power you want, the kind that makes people afraid, or the kind that actually builds something lasting. Nina held his gaze. Your choice, Roman, but make it knowing I won't stand beside someone who chooses fear. For a long moment, Roman just looked at her. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. Marcus, set up a meeting with my lawyers, all of them. I want a full audit of every business interest I own. He paused, listening. Everything. If it's questionable legally or ethically, I want to know. We're divesting. He hung up, looked at Nina. That's a start. Nina's throat tightened. Roman, I mean it. You want legitimacy? Real change? Then that's what we're doing. His jaw set. It's going to be messy. People are going to resist. Some of my interests are tangled with people who won't appreciate me walking away. How dangerous are we talking? Dangerous enough that you might want to reconsider this whole thing. Roman's hand came up, tucked hair behind her ear. I can protect you, but I can't guarantee safety. Not completely. Nina thought about that. About the studio break-in. About Victor Hastings. About the casual violence that lurked beneath Roman's polished surface. About what it would mean to tie herself to someone actively dismantling a criminal empire. I'm staying, she said, but we do this smart. No rushing, no making yourself a target unnecessarily. You have people who depend on you for legitimate work. They don't deserve to suffer because you're cleaning house. Agreed. Roman pulled her closer. This is going to take time, Nina. A year, maybe 2. Can you handle that? Can you handle me pushing back when you slip into old patterns? Probably not, but I'll try. Roman's mouth quirked, almost a real smile. Fair warning, I'm going to be terrible at this, at being vulnerable and honest and all the things you apparently require. I don't require perfect. I require effort. Nina's hand slid up to his shoulders. Show me you're trying, Roman. That's all I need. He kissed her again, slower this time, thorough and claiming. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were serious. Move your stuff to my floor, the penthouse apartment. I want you close. Roman, not as an employee, as... He stopped, seemed to struggle with the word. As mine. Whatever that means, however we define it. Just be here. Nina should have argued, should have insisted on maintaining separate spaces, separate lives. But the truth was she didn't want distance anymore. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The next 6 months were brutal. Roman wasn't kidding about the pushback. 3 of his business partners tried to block his divestment, claiming contractual obligations that took lawyers weeks to untangle. 2 of his competitors saw weakness and moved aggressively, trying to absorb his legitimate interests while he was distracted. Someone, never identified, tried to bomb one of his construction sites. The explosion was caught early, no one hurt, but the message was clear: walking away wouldn't be easy. Through it all, Nina watched Roman operate with a precision that was terrifying and impressive in equal measure. He negotiated exits from questionable ventures, reinvested in legitimate businesses, built partnerships with people who'd previously considered him untouchable. He was ruthless when he needed to be. There were still moments where Nina saw the dangerous man underneath, but he was also strategic, patient, willing to take losses to maintain his larger goal. The transformation wasn't smooth. Roman had bad days where he snapped at everyone, where the stress of dismantling everything he'd built made him vicious and unreasonable. Nina learned to recognize the signs, the tightness around his eyes, the way his hands would curl into fists, the cold fury that meant he was seconds from doing something he'd regret. Walk away, she'd tell him, right now. Walk away and breathe. Sometimes he'd listen. Sometimes he'd argue first, push back, insist he had it under control. But eventually he'd leave the room, take the space he needed, come back calmer. I hate that you're right, he said one night, after a particularly difficult negotiation. Hate that I need someone telling me when to step back. You don't need it. You choose to listen. Nina handed him a drink. There's a difference. Semantics. No. Truth. Nina sat beside him. You could ignore me, fire me, tell me to mind my business. You don't. That's a choice, Roman. That's you changing. Roman looked at her, something soft in his expression. You're the only person who's ever called me out and lived to tell about it. Should I be flattered or terrified? Both, probably. He pulled her close, pressed a kiss to her temple. Thank you. For staying. For pushing. For not letting me be less than I could be. Nina settled against him, watched the city lights beyond the windows. Thank you for trying. They fell into a rhythm. Nina spent mornings at her studio, teaching, managing, rebuilding the programs that had suffered during her absence. She brought in Diane's nonprofit partnership, started offering scholarships to kids who couldn't afford classes otherwise. The studio thrived in ways it never had before, expanding to a second location with Roman's backing. Afternoons and evenings were Roman's. Events when needed, less frequent now, but strategic. Dinners with legitimate business partners. Meetings with lawyers and accountants. Catherine Weller's approval opened doors that had been closed before, and slowly, painfully, Roman's reputation began to shift. People still feared him, but they also respected what he was building. By month 8, Roman had divested from every questionable business interest. By month 10, his lawyers confirmed he was legally clean, everything on paper, everything documented, nothing that could come back to haunt him. By month 12, Catherine Weller invited him to join the board of the Arts Council. It's real, she told Nina over lunch. What he's done. The transformation. People are still skeptical, but they're paying attention. Is it enough, Nina asked, to erase what he was? Nothing erases the past, but he's building a different future. Catherine studied her. You love him. It wasn't a question, but Nina answered anyway. Yes. Does he know? Probably. We haven't said it. Nina pushed salad around her plate. It feels too big, like saying it out loud might break whatever we've managed to build. Catherine laughed. That's the most ridiculous thing I've heard all week. Tell him, Nina. Life's too short for hesitation. That night, Nina found Roman on the terrace of the penthouse, looking out at the city he'd once ruled through fear. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, felt him relax into her touch. "I love you," she said quietly. "I know we haven't talked about it. I know it's complicated and probably stupid given everything. But I do. I love you." Roman turned in her arms, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled, a real smile, the kind that made him look younger and less dangerous and entirely human. "I love you too," he said. "Have for months. Was waiting for you to figure it out first." Nina laughed, punched his shoulder. "You're such an ass." "You knew that when you fell for me." Roman pulled her close, kissed her thoroughly. "Marry me." Nina froze. "What?" "Marry me. Not because of contracts or arrangements or anything else. Because I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." Roman's hands framed her face. "I'm not perfect, Nina. I'm still figuring out how to be someone you can build a life with. But I know I don't want to do any of it without you." Nina's heart hammered so hard she could barely breathe. "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "Then let me try again." Roman dropped to one knee, pulled a ring box from his pocket. "Nina Vale, you walked into my office 3 years ago and saved your idiot brother by agreeing to the craziest arrangement anyone's ever offered. You've spent the last 2 years pushing me to be better, calling me out when I slip, refusing to let me settle for being just a reformed criminal. You make me want to build instead of destroy. You make me believe legitimacy matters more than power. Will you marry me?" The ring was perfect. Simple, elegant, exactly what Nina would have chosen. She looked at Roman, at this man who'd terrified her and challenged her, and loved her enough to dismantle everything he'd built for a chance at something real. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Roman slid the ring onto her finger, stood, kissed her like they had all the time in the world. They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at Catherine Weller's house. Josh walked Nina down the aisle, tears streaming down his face. He'd spent the last 2 years working at Roman's construction company, learning business from the ground up, determined to prove he could be someone worth his sister's sacrifice. "You happy?" he asked before giving her away. "Terrified," Nina admitted. "But yes, happy. Good. Because if he hurts you, reformed or not, I'll find a way to make him pay." Nina laughed. "I know." The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional. But when Roman promised to love and honor her, when he pledged to be worthy of her trust, Nina saw the truth in his eyes. This was a man who'd torn down an empire to build a life worth living. Their first year of marriage was an adjustment. Roman still had moments where his instincts ran toward control and dominance. Nina still pushed back, refused to let him slip into old patterns. They fought sometimes, loud, passionate arguments that ended with both of them exhausted and the issue still unresolved. But they also learned to compromise, to trust, to build something together that was stronger than what either could create alone. By year 2, Roman's legitimate business interests had surpassed what his criminal enterprises ever earned. He'd built a real estate empire focused on affordable housing, invested in technology startups run by people who'd never had access to capital before, funded arts programs across the city. His reputation shifted from feared crime boss to respected businessman with a complicated past. Nina's studio expanded to 4 locations. The scholarship program reached hundreds of kids who would never have had access to ballet training otherwise. She started consulting with other small arts organizations, helping them navigate growth and funding challenges. They bought a house outside the city, still kept the penthouse for when they needed to be downtown, but the house was theirs. Real. A place where they could build a family. Their daughter was born 3 years after they married. Elena, named after Nina's mother. Roman held her with the same careful intensity he brought to everything that mattered, his expression soft in ways Nina had never seen before. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's wrinkly and loud," Nina said, exhausted and happy. "Give her a few weeks." Their son followed 2 years later. Marcus, after the security guard who'd protected Nina through everything, who'd become family. Roman cried when they told him the name, which shocked everyone, including Roman himself. Life settled into something Nina had never expected. Normal, stable, built on love instead of fear. Roman still worked too much, still struggled with letting go of control. But he came home every night. He coached Marcus's soccer team despite knowing nothing about soccer. He sat through endless ballet recitals for Elena. He built a life that didn't require violence or fear to sustain itself. On their 5th anniversary, Nina found Roman in his office late at night, looking at something on his computer. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Research. There's a family in the South End, single mother, 2 kids. She's working 3 jobs to keep them fed, but she's drowning in medical debt from when her daughter had cancer." Roman looked up. "I want to help. Create some kind of foundation that provides emergency assistance to families in crisis. Interest-free loans, scholarship funding, job placement assistance." Nina moved behind his chair, wrapped her arms around his shoulders. "That's a good idea. It's selfish, really. Makes me feel better about the people I hurt getting here." Roman's hand covered hers. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe doing good for selfish reasons still counts." "It counts." Nina pressed a kiss to his temple. "You've come a long way, Roman Voss." "We've come a long way." He turned in her chair, pulled her into his lap. "None of this happens without you, Nina. The legitimacy, the change, the life we've built, you made all of it possible. I just reminded you what was possible. You did the actual work. We did it together." Roman's arms tightened around her. "Everything worth having, we built together." Nina thought about that journey, from the desperate woman in his office to the person she was now, about the studio her mother had dreamed of that now served hundreds of students, about Josh, who'd grown into someone responsible and hardworking and genuinely good, about the man who'd started as a criminal and become someone worth building a life with. Change was possible. Not easy, not fast, not without cost, but possible. That was the truth Nina had learned in the years since she'd walked into Roman Voss's glass tower and offered everything to save her brother. People could change if they wanted to badly enough. Empires built on fear could be dismantled and rebuilt on something better. Love could remake even the most dangerous person into someone capable of genuine goodness. It required courage to walk into the darkness and demand better. It required patience to wait while someone tore down everything they knew and rebuilt from scratch. It required hope to believe that transformation was possible even when every instinct screamed otherwise. But it was worth it. 10 years after that first desperate meeting, Nina stood in the lobby of the foundation Roman had built, watching families receive the kind of help she'd once needed. The building was dedicated to Elena Vale, Nina's mother, who'd worked 3 jobs and died too young, but left a legacy that lived on in her daughter's work. Roman found her there, slid his hand into hers. "Thinking?" he asked. "About how far we've come, about what my mom would think of all this." Nina looked up at him. "She'd probably think I was crazy for marrying a reformed crime boss." "Probably," Roman smiled. "But she'd also see that you're happy, that you built something meaningful, that you took a desperate situation and turned it into something good." "We turned it into something good," Nina corrected. "We did." Roman pulled her close. "Thank you for that, for believing I could be more than what I was, for staying when leaving would have been easier." Nina thought about all the moments that had led here, the fear and the anger and the slow, painful transformation, about a man who'd learned to build instead of destroy, about a woman who'd found the courage to demand better and the patience to wait while someone became worthy of it. "Thank you for being worth the wait," she said. They stood together in the lobby of a foundation built to help people who'd run out of options, in a city that had learned to respect Roman Voss for what he'd built instead of fearing him for what he'd been. Outside, their children waited in the car, probably arguing about what to have for dinner. It was ordinary, normal. Everything Nina had ever wanted and never thought she'd have. Sometimes the most dangerous men make the best partners, she thought. Not because danger is attractive, but because someone who's fought that hard to change understands the value of what they've built. Someone who's dismantled an empire knows how to construct something lasting. Roman had chosen her over power, had chosen legitimacy over fear, had chosen to be someone his children could be proud of instead of someone they'd have to explain away. That was the real victory, not the foundation or the businesses or the reputation. The victory was in the choice, repeated daily, to be better than yesterday. To build instead of destroy, to love instead of control. Nina had walked into Roman's world expecting to sacrifice everything. Instead, she'd found everything worth having, and that she thought as Roman's hand tightened around hers, was the best kind of surprise.